Well, hello everyone. Here to show you right here, talk about for the vaccination verification information right here. And you see right here that according to what we heard though about talking about that mask requirements and then 6 feet apart and all that. So it's like yeah, that they're saying that according to I guess the CDC that they're saying that you are no longer required to wear a mask if you've been fully vaccinated. And I do want to know just a little bit too, to where if you had to show any source of a verification, card for your records, and let's just say that if it's going to be maybe even be copied to a driver's license or any source of passport or some sort, but really that a lot of places that are offering to laminate cards like these, and so it's like, yeah, you just for your for your records that you want to go ahead and save this information right here, and keep it in your medical files, and but you're still that I at the time I do want to know too that if it's maybe a sticker or maybe a badge or something like that that the medical team will give to you, just indicating that if you received the vaccine, if you are fully vaccinated, that you would be able to yeah, go out in public, and I'm like, oh yeah, you would be able to go visit, visit, and then you'll have your events and special holiday traditions and all that. You won't have to, you won't be required to wear a mask. But I just really think too that that talk about the afford, I'm like, yeah, that anything that whenever it comes to the CDC guidelines, though, that I think the first thing that maybe that the CDC should also consider is to wear that maybe you should still continue to wear your mask if you feel comfortable wearing a mask, but you won't have to stay 6 feet apart away from everybody else. And I just really think too that maybe if that's really the safest part, because I know we all probably say too that we all probably did not enjoy having to stay 6 feet apart, away from everybody else. And I do want to know too that that why is it that maybe that by any source of mention about that to where talk about shaking hands and maybe hugging somebody, and at the time you want to know too that, well, really, though, that if you still feel comfortable wearing your mask, but then, of course, yeah, you no longer have to wear gloves or whichever. And so a lot of times you want to know, too, that, really, that you still should be considered still washing your hands and all that. But I tell you one thing that I just really think, though, that at least give this whole process at least a year, like everybody else will probably say too, if you are fully vaccinated, that if anything, that you are no longer required to stay 6 feet apart to away from other people who are vaccinated. And so I just really think though that really mask. I'm sure most of us are probably used to wearing masks by now, and half the time that whenever you do wear a mask, if you're going to be working around any sort, any cleaning chemicals or anything like that, and half the time you want to know too that that all depends on if you feel very comfortable wearing a mask, or like anybody say that that's really optional. Really, you're not required to wear one, but let's just say that if you choose to wear one, and if you do choose to wear one, and maybe if you're going to be maybe out in public, or before you start, if you had to make a speech or something like that, or if maybe if you're working in a lab or somewhere like that. So like everybody else will probably say too, that that's really just optional. And so really the CDC would probably say that that's really optional. You don't have to think about that to where that mask. If you feel comfortable wearing a mask just because for reasons, for where you're working, or if you're going to be around other people, and maybe that yeah, we all know that that whenever you do get vaccinated, that that's not a concern of spreading any sorts of virus or some sort. But we're also talking about for fall here, around fall, that there could be another wave of the virus that's going to be going. So I just really think though that that if we get the vaccine, and then if we are fully vaccinated, that I think that the most important rule to remember is to where that we can actually we can come closer to our friends and family, to the individuals. We no longer have to stay 6 feet apart away from everybody else. And I just really think that maybe the CDC can consider that, to where that if you are fully vaccinated, that you can do make your visits. You can go ahead and go out in public, and you can go places, and you no longer have to stay 6 feet apart away from everybody else, or even 3 feet apart. You can actually shake the person's hand, especially if you're going to a job interview. You could actually pat somebody on the back, give somebody a hug. And so yeah, so a lot of times, if you do feel like wearing a mask is still going to be optional, just because that if you feel protected, and let's just say that you wear a mask for that reason, just because, yeah, well, you wear that mask just because that in case if possibly something that you're going to be around that that could be contagious or anything like that. But still, I just really think to tell everybody too that I would at least recommend everybody. I'm like, have your mask handy for at least a year, just to make sure that the number of cases that do go down, like for a number of infectious variants or anything like that. But still, that the show right here is this information card right here. And this information card, as we can see right here, it shows the information about the vaccine, the type of vaccine that you got. But I just really think too that whenever it comes to vaccinations, though, and all that like your birthday, and also information on your driver's license, how do you know necessarily about everybody else, about if everybody else had been fully vaccinated? If everybody else had been fully vaccinated, and then according to the safety measures, though, that if there's any way that you can look it up on a driver's license, or scan a QR code in or something like that, and for sure that the way technology works nowadays, that you would think that if you go ahead, and if they health departments or places will still, they'll check that information just to make sure that you've been vaccinated. And so it's like, you're having this card right here, and everybody else might even say that with that card right there, that there's information on the back here that talks about returning for your second dose, and possibly for a booster shot. And so there's going to be reminders on the back. And at the time, I do want to know too that does anybody why would you even want to get something like this laminated? Why is it that if anything, keep this for your records? Yeah, but still, that if you want to get it laminated, because there's information on the back too that you may have to follow up with by the fall. That there's information on the back there that you'll need to follow up by the fall. And I'm just like want to know too that if you were to be going out in public, and a lot of times it's like, well, do you really have to have any source of verification staple? I'm like, any source of information proving that you've been fully vaccinated. And really though, that if you're worrying, I'm like, in case of anybody that may want to know too, is that if there's like ways of how you can verify about if somebody was fully vaccinated, and how they interact whenever they are fully vaccinated. But it sure seems that way, that that whenever it comes to checking for information like that, but it's like that that does not mean that you cannot continue washing your hands. That does not mean that you cannot continue wearing gloves. You can still wear your gloves, and you can still wear your mask. But they'll probably tell everybody that please everybody, that we're not out of the woods yet. That we still like everybody else will probably say too, if you are fully vaccinated, then you can go ahead and have your traditions, your graduation, your weddings, and your celebrations and everything. But still, that they'll probably tell everybody too that if you are fully vaccinated, that you just we just really gotta be alert here about is toward that, if you are fully vaccinated, that what the safety precautions are. And they'll probably tell everybody that if you are fully vaccinated, that you can, visit, you make your visits, and then, but still, that I just really want to know too that the things that you were not able to do during the pandemic and all that, one of those included shaking somebody's hand. One of those also included, giving somebody a hug, being able to visit with somebody and all that. And so a lot of times it sure seems that way that, I would think that, from a category between 1 and 10, why the CDC, if anything, would say something about the 6 feet apart rule. I'm like, that's one thing that I don't get, is that, how come the CDC, can't tell you something like that you no longer had to stay 6 feet apart, or you no longer had to be 100 miles or 100 feet away from this other person that you've been wanting to see. And I really want to know too that how come that they don't mention that, instead of all this about mask ordinance. Well, masks are not all that bad compared to the 6 feet apart rule. And I'll tell everybody too that according to the CDC, that I would think that maybe that was the biggest impact, for 2020. That was the biggest impact there about for 2020, that having to stay 6 feet apart away from everybody else, compared to having to wear a mask. And the mask ordinance didn't come until that, before the whole shutdown, before the whole economy shut down of the economy, that it was the 6 feet apart. 6 feet apart or 12 feet apart, whichever it is. So I just really think that, if anything, that the CDC should, and, as well as for the health, the health district and all that, I just really think that, if anything, that, really, that, we should mainly focus on the fact about that the cities and stores and businesses can gradually reopen. It's safe to reopen these businesses. We no longer have to stay 12 feet apart or 6 feet apart or whichever. And at the time, I do want to know too that why is it that the information about that was not announced, other than that you are no longer required to wear a mask. But like everybody else would probably say too, that if you do choose to wear a mask just because of allergy symptoms, or just because that you feel comfortable wearing a mask, so that way that there's no super spread or anything like that. But still, if you are going to be in large groups, at an event or maybe at a festival or somewhere like that, we don't need to have it to where that somebody winds up getting sick with something, or, you're overdoing it. We don't need to overdo it either with with what goes on. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that why is it that the CDC doesn't at least get the whole process at least 6 months just to make sure everybody's doing all right? Instead, it's like, well, we're going to go ahead and eliminate. I'm like, well, we'll go ahead and drop. I'm like, yeah, it's you are no longer required to wear a mask. But I'm like, well, really, why can't the rule be the 6 feet apart rule? I'm like, I don't know why that. And I know, like, the president or the governor or the congressman, they're going to get on TV and they're going to say, whatever the doctors and the scientists are going to say. But still, that having to wear a mask is not too much of a problem with me. But still, that I know everybody else will probably say too. Does everybody? Was 2020 one of the most frustrating, complicated years for all of us? Was mask wearing the most complicated? I'm like, does everybody agree that the mask mandate was the worst of it, or staying 6 feet apart was the worst of it? I would agree that 6 feet apart was the worst of it. And not about the mask coordinates or anything like that. Having to wear a mask, well, you might wear a mask all the time at work, at work. At work, that you may wear a mask, you may have to wear a mask while you're at work. So I don't know why masks had to be too much of a problem compared to the 6 feet apart. But, of course, that's just my opinion about it. Everybody else might even say that you're having to stay 6 feet apart. I thought that maybe that was the worst of it, for 20, from 2020, besides the supplies and besides supplies are in shortage at the stores, that I don't know why that we can't think about that to word it that, for the whole part of 2020 of having to stay apart from everybody else. If you are fully vaccinated, that, yeah, you no longer have to worry about, if you've been planning to go to this job interview or go to this special occasion, you can still do that. But I just really want to know too that why is it that they're telling everybody you don't have to wear a mask? And like, in case of anybody that may want to know too, that in case if there's a situation to where that cough and cold season or flu season that starts getting real bad at some point, you want to know too that masks are not too much of a problem, and they shouldn't be too much of a problem for everybody else, especially if you are going to be doctors and nurses working there in the medical industry. And you probably say too that really that I would think that maybe the CDC rule would, if anything, would not be so strict about the 5 feet apart guideline, to where you no longer have to stay 6 feet apart from that other person. And if anything, I would probably say that should have been maybe one of the first regulations that the CDC could have recalled. Yeah, well, if you've been fully vaccinated, you no longer have to stay 12 feet apart from that other person. You no longer have to stay 3 feet apart from that other person. I don't know why they didn't mention that, but, really, that's just really just my thoughts and my opinion about the whole situation, because we don't need to have to where that coming up around the fall, to where that whenever businesses start reopening, and we have it to where that somebody passes on a virus to somebody else. And let's just say that if it's pneumonia, or if it's maybe fevers or rashes or anything like that, or any sorts of a variant, I'm like, so really that taking away that mask ordinance, people may say this to where, well, really, I don't know why you would want to take that away compared to that 6 feet or 5 feet apart rule. And, having to wear a mask anywhere you go, according to my opinion about the whole situation, that having to wear a mask, anywhere you go, though, to me, though, it's like, yeah, having to wear a mask anywhere you go. To me, it's like, yeah, whenever you do have to wear a mask anywhere you go, that, that's another way of how you want to say is toward, really, that, maybe if not everybody really wants something like, yeah, especially if you're going to be working somewhere where you're working with, cleaning chemicals, or maybe if you're working at a lab, to where that they say that a mask is also required just to be able to protect yourself against anything that you're working there at the lab, anything that's violates the safety rule or anything like that. So really that so I just really think though that mask should be mask should also be recommended. Mask should be recommended, but the rule should be is to where you no longer have to stay 3 feet apart from everybody else. So that's something to think about. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.